All right, we're here with Terry Scholl, another one of the firefighters who fought the MPRC fire in 1973. So tell us a little bit about yourself, if you can just let us know where you were born, where you went to school, when you decided to become a firefighter.
Well, I was born and raised here in Creve, Coeur. My grandparents were some of the original people in Creve, Coeur. And they had a farm where 270 and Olive is now, was my grandparents' farm. I grew up there. And we lived, Creve Coeur Fire Department was a volunteer department at the time. And my uncles and a lot of them were on the fire department. And we lived about maybe 100 yards behind the firehouse across the field. And when I was like 12, 13 years old, I used to hang out at the firehouse with a couple of the volunteers and my uncles and that. And then they went paid fire department. And I think they hired like 6 or 8 firemen at the time. And again, I would go hang out up there with these guys, and they just became my mentors. They helped me do schoolwork and stuff like that. My homework, I'd take my homework and sit up there with them, and they'd do it and with me. And I just got to be good friends with them. And then one of the firefighters named Don Capra got killed on a barn fire. And I just totally withdrew. I didn't want to be around it at all. And for probably a year and a half. And then there was a firefighter up there named Bob Palmer. And you know Bob?
I knew Bob for a long time, and one of my great regrets is that we were never able to connect to do this.
Oh.
But he's responsible for a lot of the pictures that we've got.
Yes.
From the NPRC.
He was an absolute phenomenal person.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was up in that area and I saw Bob, and he said, well, how come you don't come around the firehouse anymore? And I said, well, I don't know. I said, with Don Capper, he said, come back up here again. He said, I said, okay. So I went up there, and he kind of took me under his wing. And he was my mentor, and he was the reason, that I got in the fire service. And when I graduated, when I was 18 years old, I graduated from high school, and they hired me. I was the youngest paid firefighter in the state of Missouri, and they hired me at 18 years old up there. They did a big news article on me in the St. Louis Globe-Democrat at that time. And I worked there until I was 21. When I was 21, I was, young and, full of piss and vinegar. And I'd been on the fire department now, so I left up there and I went on Clayton Police Department. I was on Clayton Police Department for about a year and a half, went out to Los Angeles, and one of the police officers from Clayton left there and went to Los Angeles and went on the police department out there. So I went out to visit him, and he said, oh man, you got to come out here and be on the police department out here. It's great. So I did. I went out there and was on the police department out there for 4 years, I guess. And my dad still was here. My dad had a couple bad heart attacks. I said, okay, it's time to go home back to St. Louis. So I came back here, and when I got back here, I went back on the fire department. I was up there, and they had an opening, and I talked to the chief up there, Bob Mertz at the time, and he said, well, I'll hire you back if you want to come back on. He said, but he said, if you want to be a policeman, he said, don't take this job. And he said, but if you want to be back on the fire department, he said, just if you're going to come back on, he said, stay for a while. I said, okay. So I did. Came back, and I went back on there, and I started in 73, shortly before the Record Center fire. And they had the Snarkel, which in its time, it was the firefighting machine. I mean, it threw more water than 5 ladder trucks combined. Probably not, but I mean, it seemed like it. And it was the firefighting machine, there's no doubt about it. We were booked into fires all over St. Louis County. I mean, if they had something big, a commercial building, and they couldn't handle it and everything else, all of a sudden they'd, call 289, get 289 in here. And when we'd pull in, I mean, they'd just stand there and say, okay, what do you need? And say, well, we need 2 pumpers to pump into it, because one pumper can't supply it by itself. You know, we need 2 pumpers to pump into it, need at least 3 lines. We'll take 4, but we need at least 3 large lines. We got 3-inch hose on the Snorkel. So we'll give you 3-inch hose from your pumper to us and give us 2 pumpers and we'll put your fire out for you. And we did. I mean, we went, like I said, we went all over the county. We were up in Florissant fighting fires. We were in Frontenac. We were down South County. We went everywhere fighting fires. And it was great during those days, man. That was real fire department.
So the NPRC fire started a little bit after midnight on July 12th, 73. You were with Creve Coeur Fire Department.
Right.
When were you on duty when the call came through for you guys to go?
Yes.
Okay. And was it that night or how far into?
It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and of course at that time we didn't have the separate bedroom bunk halls like they have now. It was one like a military type bunk hall, you know, twice as big as this room with all just the regular beds. And about 3, you know, and the klaxon horn would go off and the lights would all come on. I mean, and you'd try and catch your breath and slow your heart back down. And about 3 o'clock in the morning it went off. And lights all came on, and over the loudspeaker they said 289 only, respond to a 5th alarm general at the record center with again gave the address. And everybody sat up in bed and they just kind of looked at each other. Everybody goes, what the F is a 5th alarm general? We've never heard of a 5th alarm general in St. Louis County before. So he says, okay. I said, well, I know where the record center is. You know, I said, I know where it is. Well, I was riding in the back jump seat on the Snorkel, and I had Bill DeClue was driving, and Richard Smith, Smitty, was riding the captain's seat. He was a private, but he was riding the captain's seat. So we pulled out. We went down Olive. I told him, I said, go Olive to Warson.
Oh, and you were a private too at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
I was a private. All 3 of us were privates that were on the truck. And I slid the window open and stuck my head in. I told him, go Olive to Warson, make a left on Warson, take it over to Page, make a right on Page, and we'll go to I know where it's at. I said, okay, fine. So we went down to Olive to Warson, made a left on Warson, got down to Page, made a right, and went down about a half a mile, and they were slowing down. And I said, what are you slowing down for? They said, well, it's got to be around here somewhere because the smoke was real heavy there. I said, we ain't even close yet, man. You know, and when there was that much smoke there. So, and they said, well, you sure you know? I said, I know exactly where it is. It's way down almost to Woodson Road. And they go, okay. So we kept driving them and then we got down there. Now, and I guess there was a convention somewhere because if not all the fire chiefs, almost all of the fire chiefs were in, I believe, Jefferson City, if I'm not mistaken. They were somewhere at a convention. So when we got over there, I mean, there were captains and a couple assistant chiefs, but for the most part, there were really no real chief officers over there. And then when we pulled in, I forget who it was now, but they came over and they said, oh, good, glad you guys are here. I mean, you could see flames, you know, the whole top floor, you know, on the back side was just roaring. And they said, where do you want to go? We said, well, put us right in the center of the back. And I said, we'll back in right in the center, and then we'll work it from there. And they said, okay, so what do you need? And we said, we need 2 pumpers to supply. We've got 3-inch hose. We need 3 or 4 3-inch lines coming into our truck, and we need 2 pumpers. And they said, well, we don't have 2 pumpers. We'll just supply it with 1 pumper. We said, you can try, but you won't give us the water we need with 1 pumper. Oh, well, West Overland had a brand new fire truck, and it was there. And they said, oh, well, this was a 1,250 GPM truck, I think, which now they're 2,000, but it was like 1,250. And he said, oh, that'll supply you. And we said, no, it won't. And he goes, oh, yeah, well. I said, okay, fine. So we backed in, we set up, went up, and they pumped us with West Overland's fire truck and burned the fire truck up. They destroyed it trying to pump to us because they just couldn't do it.
Oh.
And then they finally wound up coming in and giving us 2 trucks after that one. They shut it down and got it out of the way. They burned a pump up in it because they, you know, in a brand new truck trying to supply us, and they couldn't supply us. So we'd go up and we had, I believe it was U City's aerial on one side and Normandy's aerial on the other side. Not sure who's of theirs. And then we were in the middle with the snorkel. And we would start on one side because all the windows were knocked out of the back there on the top floor. And we'd start on one side, and because with what we had, we could get right up by the window, and we'd just keep going down from window to window. We'd knock the fire down, and we'd go to the next window, and then we'd knock the fire down in there and go to the next window and just gradually go like that. And we'd work our way down, and when we would knock it down, the ladder trucks couldn't hold it. You know, by the time we got down on the other end down here, it was coming back out on this side. We just kept going all the way across, knocking it down, and the ladder trucks were trying to hold it at the time. But it was summertime, and you know, being on a ladder truck in those days, I mean, the guys got full turnout gear, they got their helmets on, and they got their Pompier belts on, and they're hooked in on the top of that ladder, and they got the old, you know, hand, you know, deluge guns and that, and up on top, and the ladder tips, and they're up there fighting it like that. Well, we're up in the snorkel, and we've got a basket up there that's 4 by 5. You know, and the 2 of us, well, we took our coats off and our shirts off, and you know, we're up there up above. You know, we're not in the smoke, we're above the smoke. We get back off a little bit, and our nozzle is out here. We got a crank to set ours. You know, we're doing that, and we're sitting there cranking it and just moving the joystick and moving the truck over a little bit and just having a good time and hollering at those guys and on the ends of the ladder truck. So that's where we spent. I mean, we came down and spelled each other a little bit, but we stayed there for 3 days.
So tell me, how about the heat and the smell? When you're that close to it, were you feeling that heat coming at you?
Not really. Some, but not. I've been in a lot of worse situations with heat, you know, houses and stuff like that. The building itself wasn't burning. It was the contents in the building. Mm-hmm. So you get the heat like on a house or something like that. When the house starts burning, that's when you feel the heat. Or if you go in, you know, well, nobody was going into this. Eventually they did go in and went up the stairs and stuff like that. But nobody was, at this time when we got in there, nobody was going in anymore, you know, and fighting it from the inside. It was just strictly from the outside, and the building itself wasn't burning. It was just contents inside, filing cabinets and desks and, you know, typewriters and all that kind of stuff in there. So
all that paper.
Yeah. Well, we didn't know what was in it. I mean, we just, you know, it was a military record center. We had no idea at the time what, you know, I mean, that it was all of the records in that. I mean, I have no idea what was on the other floors. That's the same thing?
Yeah, it was all pretty much the same thing. Combination of file areas and office areas. And see, with the military personnel files at that time, they kept them all basically in filing cabinets. And I know Chief Palmer talked about that they learned after having been there for a while, when you walked up to a smoking file cabinet, you had 2 guys. You had one guy with a hose and another one to pull the drawer open and then immediately put water on it. He said because early on, as soon as you opened the drawer,
yeah,
it flared up again.
Just small flashovers.
Yeah.
I'll be darned. Well, see, I did not know that. I never did go inside the building.
Oh, okay.
When I was there. I mean, I went up to the back, 5 feet inside, because after we were there, like on a second or third day, I mean, everybody had been throwing water. There was probably a half a dozen ladder trucks around this thing and us that were throwing water for a long time. And I mean, it was coming down the stairs. It looked like a waterfall coming down the stairs.
So when you guys got there then, because we've seen pictures where, okay, the building, you know, is going straight up, and then it gets to that 6th floor and stuff is already doing this. Was it already at that leaning point, do you remember?
Not to my knowledge, not from where we were on the backside.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And I know at one point in time, there was talk about ventilating the building because everybody was hosing it from the outsides, and they said it has no place to go. And I believe Crestwood, and I only heard this, I remember hearing it when I was over there, that Crestwood, there was a new product out supposedly called JetX. And it was like a shaped military charge is what it was. And it would be used to get into some of these kind of buildings. And somebody had said that Crestwood had JetX, and they could bring it open and they could blow a hole in the center of the roof on the inside. But I don't think it ever happened, and I don't know if in fact they really had, or if that was just somebody talking over there. But I do know that they were talking about Crestwood Fire Department having a unit that carried JetX. I'd never heard of it, you know.
Yeah, it's first I've heard of that, because afterwards you can definitely see the damaged areas that were what at that time was the roof. You know, that there were spots that were just caved in, and actually we've got photographs where some of the shelving and the file cabinets are just melted.
Oh yeah.
And when they started the recovery process on that, they came in and airlifted bulldozers up there and just started shoving all the stuff off the side. And that's the stuff that they were able to save, which was, there were about, they estimate about 18 million files that were just completely destroyed. And they were able to, maybe it was never supposed to be the roof anyway. So,
yeah,
you know, okay, we'll finish this concrete, but we're doing it, you know, floor grade and not roof grade.
Yeah, because really, if it was the floor of the 6th, all the fire was on the 6th floor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it ever got below there anywhere.
No.
No, it was all on the 6th floor. So, and the floor, obviously on a fire, the floor is your freshest air and the coolest area, plus we were throwing water in. The floor in there probably never got any heat at all, or very little heat.
Okay.
You know, I mean, the heat would have gone up. You know, now it was banking down in there because we really weren't letting it escape. We, like I said, we didn't have any way to ventilate it and let it go anywhere. But the floor, I doubt it ever reached any kind of temperatures and it would hurt the concrete on it. But like you said, it was probably never designed to be a roof.
Yeah.
And especially where the columns were, every column is, they had to reseal all of that, and then they had plumbing coming up through that was never intended to be outside and that. So,
speaking of plumbing, and this is one question we're going to make it a point to ask everybody that we interview, just to get your opinion. When the building was built and they wanted to put sprinklers in it, and the armed forces came back and said, no, we don't want to do that. You know, if one of those ever springs a leak, it's going to ruin all these personnel files. So, What do you think about that?
I think, well, there's a big push now for sprinklers in homes. Well, I think sprinklers put out fires. Sprinklers save lives because they put out fires. But I think sprinklers also rupture, they freeze, the pipes break, and they do a lot of damage. Okay? I would not have sprinklers in my home. Smoke detectors, an absolute must. You know, getting out of the house, absolutely. Yeah, but as far as putting the fire out, water damage will do as bad as fire damage.
Yeah, because the stuff that we deal with there now, besides the what I call the physical damage to it from the fire and the water, it's also moldy. Mm-hmm. You know, because you got to think. You know, we were talking earlier when that fire happened. It was summer when they started recovering all those records. It's August, and they're taking all these wet documents and putting them into milk crates. And, you know, St. Louis, that time of the year when it's that hot, and it doesn't take much of a food source for mold to start growing, because the food source for the most part is already in the paper.
Sure.
You know, it's a cellulose-based thing, so it's got sugars in it. And there again, the stuff that we work on, the level of mold can be from a little bit here and there to sometimes you get entire sheets of paper that are so covered with mold you can't see what's on them. You get all that brushed off.
Yeah. Now, for the most part, I think in office buildings that are sprinklered, as long as it doesn't have any place where it can freeze and the pipes break, they're pretty good. You know?
Let me ask you this too, getting back to the fire, because this would be another one of those things we're going to ask everybody. And for want of a better way to phrase it, at any time while you were there fighting it, did you have a oh shit moment? You know, like something's happening and you're thinking, oh, this isn't good.
Nah.
It's good.
Never.
Anything funny other than throwing chicken bones at the other guys?
No, like I said, we were there for 3 days. We'd come down and a couple other guys would go up. We never left. We slept in the cab of the Snorkel. You know, a couple of times you'd lay up there for a few hours and catch a little nap or whatever, and then get back up and walk around. We pretty much stayed with our truck there. Well, our protocol was 3 guys were on the truck. You had 1 guy stayed on the tailboard, and then 2 guys were in the basket. And Smitty and I were the ones in the basket. Bill DeClue was the driver, so he was pretty much the one on the back of the tailboard. Smitty's dead, and Bill DeClue's dead. They're both gone. In fact, I've got a picture in my office back there I'll show you of Smitty and I at the record center. I don't know if you've seen this picture or you have this picture. Somebody gave me this a long time ago. It's Smitty and I in the basket. It's nighttime, and we're getting ready to go up, I guess, or coming back down.
Yeah.
Now, I don't remember. I don't know if that was the night we got over there or the following night, or if we were coming down or going up, or I don't remember anybody snapping that picture, so I don't have any idea when it was taken. But it's dark around, and you can see the record center behind it, but you can't see any fire. So, but we would have been on the ground floor, so the fire would have been up 6.
Yeah, I think that might be one that we got a copy of from either the Post-Dispatch or the Globe Democrat, because everybody had news crews there, and we've been trying also to get video of, you know, the situation as it was happening. All the TV stations say they can't find anything in their archives. There's one video that I found on YouTube that if you type in 1973 NPRC fire, and it's somebody who lived close to there, a home movie.
Really?
And it starts out with like a kid playing in the backyard in a kiddie pool, and then it goes to about maybe a couple of minutes during the daytime of the building on fire. But we've also talked to people too that can remember seeing, and everybody talks about Julius Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be with Channel 4. And video of him like outside the gate, with the building in the background doing a report from there. We keep hoping that someday it'll turn up. But see, at that time, if they weren't shooting directly to film, they were shooting to videotape, that once they were done with the story, a lot of times they just reused the tape.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're talking to you guys now. Unfortunately, we didn't get this started 10 years ago when we were talking about it first.
You would have had some, I guess, but
we've got
I suspect a lot of that stuff was gone after the first 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and we've got, I think, 25 people that have agreed to be interviewed.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and because it's one of those things where it's kind of like when you go to war, and for me at least, the best stories are from the individual perspective.
Oh, sure.
The grunts that were doing it. The generals and all the officers write their books and do stuff later to basically justify their actions. The grunts talk about what they saw directly in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know they made a lot of really good jobs for a lot of off-duty firemen over there. They were paying them pretty good to do fire watch for, I think, for a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken. They had firemen that actually walked the building, and they did fire watch, because I don't know if they did, the alarm system at the time wasn't right, or if they just couldn't get up to fire codes or whatever. But I know a lot of the firemen, that was their part-time job. They'd go over and do fire watch at the record center, especially community. A lot of the community firefighters, because that was their district there. For a lot of community firefighters, that was a hell of a part-time job for them for a long, long time afterwards.
I would bet. As far as because you were talking about, you guys were there 3 days, and it was basically 72 hours straight. The other departments did the same thing?
Pretty much so, yeah. I think the other departments, a lot of them, traditionally what you do is you'll relieve on the scene. The guys that'll come on duty tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock or 7:30, they'll get, 3 guys on an engine company or 4 guys on an engine company, and they would come in and they would relieve on the scene. And that, the Snarkle, we were kind of such a specialized unit that we really didn't do it. We were asked, you want us to get some relief over here for you, but we were actually having fun. I was 25 years old, man. That was neat shit at that time to me. I would have stayed there for a week straight, and never thought about it. I mean, we had food. It wasn't freezing cold. I don't remember how hot it was during the day, but I don't think it was extremely, for July, I don't think it was extremely hot during the day. It wasn't one of those 100-degree times, I don't believe. I'm not 100%, I'm not positive.
Well, I know the pictures that we look at, like more the portrait types or whatever, the guys, they're there working. And yeah, now that you mention it, nobody looks like they're...
Yeah, I don't remember it being, oh my God, hot. But then I will say, normal firefighters on the scene of that, they're in full turnout boots and all buckled up and everything else. Hell, we were up in the Snarkle. We took our shirts off. Hell, we were sitting up there in T-shirts, in the sun. If it was the smoke would blow this way a little bit. I mean, on a ladder truck, if you're there and the smoke blows at you, that's where you are. In the Snarkle, if the smoke blows, you grab the joystick and you move yourself over 4 or 5 feet, or you move yourself up. You move out of the smoke. And we're sitting up there drinking orange juice and eating cookies. And like I said, I'm 25 years old. I had just come back on. What was the date of that?
July 12th.
12th.
It was like a little bit after midnight.
Okay, well,
So it started.
July 11th was my first day back on the fire department. So that day was the first day when I came back on the fire department. So, I mean, I'd been on the fire department before. When I came back, fell right back into the snorkel. I mean, I was with a crew that I knew and everything else. So it was my first day back, and like I said, I was 25 years old. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I'll stay here as long as you want. I'd probably do it today as long the same. I wouldn't change anything at all. That's, but like I said, most firefighting, it's very strenuous work. I mean, for the snorkel unit, like I said, we were kind of a specialized unit in the county. We didn't really roll hose much. For the most part, we'd pull in and on anything. I mean, including that one over there. And they'd say, if they saw the snorkel coming in, they said, "Thank God you're here. What do you need? Where do you want to put it?" They didn't tell you where to go or anything else. So we said, well, we'll go around the back and we'll put it right here and bring me hose lines in and everything else. And we set it up and we go throw water. So it was easy firefighting.
Yeah. Once you got the bucket up, physically, can you remember maybe about how close you got to the building?
Oh, to the building? At different times? Oh, sometimes we were right up. We could reach out and touch the building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'd get right up to the windows on it. Yeah, I mean, we were right there. We didn't touch the building, but like I said, you were, with the front of that basket. Yeah, I mean, we'd pull right up to where the windows are. Well, we had a pike pole in there. It was probably, I think it's an 8-foot pike pole. But we were taking some of the glass out up there with it. Snorkel's really nice for that too. So we'd get up there and we'd hit and break it like that, and then we'd actually have our gloves on and we'd reach up in there and break pieces of the glass out, and we'd watch where we're throwing glass down. So, and we'd throw pieces of glass down, or throw them back inside the building. If they were small enough, you could just toss them back in the building. We'd toss them back in there. So we were close enough with the snorkel to be able to actually reach out and touch the building and break pieces of glass off and throw them in, which is what we did a lot of. But we had small, actually on the snorkel we carried the regular Pompier axe, but then we also carried a couple of aircraft crash axes. They're have a curved blade like this, and they're really designed to rip and cut through like glass or metal and that. And we took a lot of the windows out with that up there.
Now you said snorkel would pump 1,250 gallons a minute.
Oh no, the trucks, most of the trucks were 1,000 gallon a minute pumpers.
Okay.
We didn't have a pump. We didn't have a pump on the snorkel at all.
Oh, okay.
We had to be supplied by trucks, but we needed trucks that would give us like 2,000 gallons a minute. Well, some of the new trucks will do that. Okay. Well, we needed 2,000 gallons a minute. None of the old trucks could do it, except most of them were 1,000 gallon a minute trucks. Some of them were only 750, but most of them were 1,000 gallon a minute.
Yeah.
Well, they had West Overland's brand new one was at 1,250, and they said, well, we can kick it into volume and we can supply you. Well, they did for a short period of time, but they were just running it so hard that it burned the engine up in it.
So say, just so we can get an idea, okay, with your snorkel, if you're shooting in a straight line, what's maximum distance?
Again, it depends on what you've got pumping to you. See, most of the ladder trucks had 2.5 inch nylon jacketed hose up the ladder, okay? And you would pump into that, and it was, like I said, 2.5 inch nylon hose. We had a 4 inch steel pipe, so we didn't have the friction loss, and we had 4 inches as opposed to 2.5. So we could throw a lot of water with that thing. With a straight stream on it, Oh, I think you could very easily lob it 250, 300 feet,
Okay.
you know, with
Yeah,
with
just
no
so
problem.
Whoever ends up watching this someday gets some idea of the.
Yeah, 250 to 300 feet. I know that at one point up there, when we had a lot of the fire was getting knocked down and stuff like that. I mean, we would put it on a straight stream, and we'd go into up against the window almost. I mean, we'd be 4 or 5 feet from the.
It damaged ballpark another 7 million. And that's the stuff that when I was there, and then the people that are still there now in the preservation lab, those are the records that they work on.
They're still doing them today, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're still working on some of those records, trying to.
Yeah, it's never going to end because we only work on them when we get a request from the veteran or their family. And if it's in the burn file storage base, we get it. Some of them are, well, they go anywhere from having maybe just a little bit of singe around the edges on all the paper to some of them are burned to the point where out of a sheet of paper, maybe only about this much of it is recognizable as paper. Some of them are just completely crumpled up, and they've got processes there where, you know, if it's crumpled really badly but otherwise still in pretty good shape, we can humidify those documents, put them into I always tell people, the Three Stooges book press, flatten them out, copy them, get those to the veterans. We've got technology there now where you can be looking at a document that, like I said, except for maybe this much of it, is just burned absolutely to a crisp black. We can take that and take a picture of it with an infrared camera, because ink and pencil lead burns at a different temperature than what paper does. So we take that photograph and we essentially create a negative. When you look at that picture then, it's like anything that's written on it or printed on it is jumping right off at you.
Has anybody ever estimated what the cost of all that recovery has? Now we're talking, 40 years. Almost, 45 years.
Yeah, there's numbers out there that I've heard, but I can't remember right now. Our preservation lab there has a staff right now of just over 12 people. And, they estimated at one time, well, they figured, okay, 7 million files that are out there, average of 100 sheets of paper in each file that was damaged. So, 70 million or whatever, 700 million documents. It'll never end. I tell people.
Now, how many people did they have in the preservation lab when they were really going at it strong?
It's pretty much been static at about that amount.
Okay, even right after it happened when they were still.
No, because see, they didn't spin up the preservation lab until about 2000.
Oh, okay.
And so before that,
I'd heard they were freeze drying some of them, and
yeah,
and
the
different
stuff
things.
that was wet they sent to McDonnell Douglas, and they put them in these big units that sucked all the moisture
Liquid
out.
nitrogen and.
Yeah.
Wow.
And now the effect of that is you suck all the moisture out of paper and it becomes real brittle. So sometimes it can just fall apart in your hands. That's why we do the humidification procedure. We're putting just enough moisture back into that paper to make it pliable again. So we can spread it out, flatten it, get it to a point where it can be copied.
Amazing what they can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's changing all the time.
Yeah. Well, now they caught the guy that set the fire originally, correct?
There's always been argument about that. Was it accidental or was it done on purpose?
Well, I believe, and again, we were in a different end of it. We were fighting the fire, but like within the second day, we were told that somebody was seen running out of the building before the fire, and they knew who it was, and the police had him.
Oh, okay.
So that was like the second day. So it was right there, and I don't know if it was somebody that worked there.
Okay.
I don't know. It was a cleaning person or a janitor or something, but they told us that the police had them, and I know that. They called in, I think it was St. Louis City, had 4-inch hose at the time because they were running out of hydrants.
4-inch hose.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were running out of hydrants to supply everybody. And down across behind there, if they could get over to, I think Dealman Road, I guess it was, or maybe it wasn't Dealman. It was one of those roads down there. Anyway, they hand-jacked the hose down there, and the firemen were cutting a hole in the fence down there, and the people came out and they were all pissed off because the firemen were doing this and everything else, and they had to bring in the police department down there and until they could help them run the hose, and so they could supply more water from down on the other side of the parking lot down there and bring it in.
Okay. Yeah, I do know, getting back to what you were saying about how it started, I do know they had a suspect, they had a name. In the end, after their investigation, no charges were filed. So,
Yeah. So, and this was like the second day that we heard that, so, or maybe the third day. So that was in the beginning of the investigation,
yeah.
I'm sure at that point. So yeah, they might not have done that, but yeah, it was, I guess, one of the largest fires, they've had in St. Louis County. I can't imagine anything that was bigger than that in the county.
Yeah, at the time that it happened, if I remember correctly, it was the second worst archives library disaster ever.
Oh, I can imagine
And
that.
the thing that was number one was when Alexander the Great destroyed the libraries in Egypt. So I was like, okay, we're number two.
Yeah. Yeah, it was it was quite the fire. But I do know when it came across as a fifth alarm general, I mean, it was just, everybody was just dumbfounded. Everyone, what the hell is that?
Do you know of anybody that got hurt while that was going on? Okay.
No. Did anybody get hurt, do you know, or?
As far as we know, nobody.
I was going to say, I don't know of that. But it was a really easy fire to fight. I mean, I've been in house fires and basement fires where you take a beating going in there. Really, nobody was taking a beating on this one. I mean, some of the guys had gone in and gone upstairs and they couldn't, they were forced back out and stuff like that. But pretty much it was decided that it was going to be fought with ladder trucks. And, I mean, it was at that point, it was a big fire, and it wasn't really going out because we were just pushing it to the center of the building is all we were doing, and flooding it. But it really was a fairly easy fire. It wasn't like one of those real dangerous fires where, you have to worry about the ceiling caving in on you or falling through a floor,
Right.
or anything like that. So I know they were, because up in the Snarkle, the good thing about the ladder trucks is one guy can come down, another guy can go up. They alternate. Well, in the Snarkle, when you're up there throwing water, you have to shut down completely and bring the whole basket down to change guys out. So we didn't do that very often. I mean, we would stay up there but it was easy job up there. Hell, we took our coats off, like I said, and we put our coats down. We lay in the bottom of the basket. Hell, we're laying up there sunning ourselves. Yeah. And then we had a bucket up there with a rope. And if we needed anything, we would lower it down. So, and we had communications. We had a intercom between us and down below, and we call them down there and say, hey, we're thirsty. It's okay, send the bucket down. We'd send the bucket down, and then they'd put, I mean, it sounds disgusting when you tell people this. Firemen understand. They had cups. They'd put like 4 or 5 cups in there of like an orange juice, orangeade or something, and then they had vanilla wafer cookies, and they just pile them in there around them. So they would well, then by the time we'd hoist it up, it'd slop all over. So then the vanilla wafers are all saturated. We were just scooping the stuff out of the bottom of it and eating it. And then they got Kentucky Fried Chicken. They brought in fried chicken, and they put in a bunch of fried chicken and hoisted it up to us. And we were sitting up there like the second day. And I mean, these guys on the ladder trucks, on Normandy's ladder truck, you got to figure the guy is about probably 10 feet below us and about from here to your car away. Throwing the bones at him and trying to then the second day we were up there because you're still fighting fire 2 days. I mean, we just, the fire wasn't going out. Well, like you say, it was all that paper in there and there was so much of it, how much water you throw in there, you're really not going to get to the areas that are burning. And they told us, they said from down below on the intercom, they said there's fire on the floor right below that. We can see it from down here. They said drop down and put that fire out. We said okay, so drop the snorkel basket down, and we drop down 20 feet or whatever, and we're from here to that wall over there from the windows. And we're looking, and you can see clear in them, just like these windows here. Mm-hmm. And we said, there's no fire in there. So we got back on the intercom. We said, there's no fire in there. And they said, yes, there is. We can see it from here. And we're saying, we think you're seeing a reflection because we're looking straight in there, and there is no fire in there. You probably can't see it. We can see it from down here. They said, break the window out and put the fire out. And Smitty and I looked at each other and they said, there's no fire in there. And they said, break the window out and put out the fire. Smitty says, okay. So Smitty took a pike pole and he busted the window and busted a chunk of the window out. And we threw water in and they said, okay, fine, you got it. And we looked and we said, there was never any fire in there, man.
So it was a reflection.
It was a reflection. It had to be.
It magically disappears.
Well, yeah. Well, then we thought, well, maybe they're seeing so. But we're thinking, because we were just up there going, this is crazy. There's no fire. It's so obvious. So anyway, I said, break the window out and throw water in there. You'll get it out. We said, okay. So we did.
How about sounds? Could you hear anything like, groaning or whatever coming from the building itself, or was just with what you guys were doing with putting on it too much noise?
There was so much noise from the engines, the fire trucks out there, and the engines pumping and everything else. I don't remember any sounds at all from the building. From where we were, I just don't remember that.
I was just wondering because did you ever go into that building before this, like
No.
do a walkthrough or whatever? Okay, it was good concrete 1950s construction. And the support columns in there were huge. Probably half again the size of that table. And solid concrete with a lot of rebar in them. And we've got pictures, and what we've been told happened, okay, concrete's porous. So as water's coming in from above or whatever, and it's going down into that, and we've got pictures of a lot of these columns, we figure that's what caused it to start to shift. Because these columns, in some cases, about halfway up, and just about every one of them are broken on an angle. And there's a offset. It's kind of hard to tell with photographs of maybe this far. So it's like it goes, you know, droop, and then this way. And the only thing we can theorize on that is, as they became saturated inside with water, it's generating steam, it's generating pressure, and these things had to have just exploded.
I don't remember hearing any of that stuff. I do remember somebody, and I don't remember if it was afterwards, I guess they were talking, because the roof, I know, was solid concrete too. Mm-hmm. So there was no way to get it to where it could ventilate it. So, you know, because if we could have got a hole, that was discussed. I mean, from up where we were, we could get up high, and we said, you know, if you can open the whole roof up some way, and they said we can't. Well, that was why they were talking about, or somebody had talked about JetX, whether or not that was real or not. But so if we could do that, then firefighting is pushing the fire and making it go somewhere. Well, we were pushing the fire and it had nowhere to go. So you have to give it an escape route. Well, put a hole in to ventilate, that gives it the escape route. Right. And they couldn't do that. But then we were told that that building was built to where they could, that every floor was the same as the roof. Mm-hmm. So they said it was designed that if they wanted to go another 3 stories up, it was there ready to go. You just add more stories on top.
Yeah, it's what we've heard, because, you know, once that 6th floor was destroyed, and it was just, you know, all the records were shoved off of there, everything was cleaned up, and so then what had been the floor of the 6th floor became the roof.
And it was the same thing, yeah.
And it always leaked. Even when I was working there, it was like no matter what they did to it, how much money they spent, you know, whatever, there were always leaks that were coming up somewhere. And I'm like, well, you know, it could be it's the same thickness as everything else, but when you consider the damage it was done to it during the fire, plus the fact that
window, and you'd see desks and chairs and typewriters in there, and I mean, we'd take that straight stream and just, because you could crank it like this and it'd just go across like that. I mean, we were hitting typewriters and throwing them across the room, and they'd just hitting on the walls behind it and everything else. I mean, you were doing a lot of damage, but it didn't make any difference at that point. But I mean, oh yeah, we could roll desks in there with it, just roll them from one side of the building to the other in there with that thing.
Okay. Well, that's all I can think of. One of our things that we're wanting to do, because we know, talking to you guys, it's like nobody's been back since then. And so one thing that Dave and I have talked about, and we want to, you know, get it okayed once we get done with this part of this, with the power to be there at the Record Center, is just having a day, and anybody who can make it up there, take you and walk you through the preservation lab to see what we do. You know, because, yeah, there were 18 million records destroyed, but because of what you guys were able to do with the technology you had at the time and your knowledge, you still saved about 7 million.
Well, that was good.
And it helps the vets out. And then we're talking too, because I know there'd be a huge response to it, is doing, for anybody who'd be interested.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to.
You know, like a panel discussion afterwards, and or some evening
Yeah.
in the future. And don't know if we'd do it there at the Record Center, or we can get a room in a library or whatever. And because I imagine there's probably some of those guys that you may have run into at the time that you haven't seen since then.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I don't know how many are still alive even. I mean, that's what, 50 years ago?
46.
46 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, I'm going to be 71 in 2 weeks. And I was 25 at the time.
Yeah.
So a lot of the guys that were there were, you know, firefighters that had been around for a while. So a lot of them, I know that were there, were 35, 40, 45 years old. They'd be up in their upper 80s and 90s now.
Yeah.
A lot of, well, how old
Like
is,
Chief Dick.
I was going to say, there's a classic example, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, Bob Palmer's dead, Smitty's gone, Bill DeClue's gone from our department. I don't know of anybody other than myself on our department, but we were not one of the big players up there. I mean, we had sent trucks up there and stuff. I believe our engine company moved into community and did a move up. Our engine company, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think our engine company was up there. I don't remember for sure. I know the Snarkle was that was my baby at the time.
Yeah.
And that's so, but I mean, it was firemen or firefighting stuff. I know that one time they even brought out to the city. They called down into the city and brought out a full first alarm response from the city of St. Louis, far up there. And that's so, yeah, it was, it was fun actually. I enjoyed it.
If nothing else, a good welcome back on your second.
Yeah, yeah.
So, hello, Terry. We missed you.
Yes, it was.
Out of everything that you ever fought, if you had to rate things on a scale, where would you rate that fire?
As far as,
Let's say from 1 being the absolute worst thing you ever had to work to 500 or whatever being the grass fire.
well, I guess it depends on whether you're talking about size-wise.
Yeah.
Or obviously size-wise it's the largest, there's no doubt about that, size-wise. But as far as danger-wise, not really. You know, I mean, with that Snarkle, we were in some pretty hairy situations at times. We were over in at the on Page. At Page, they had lubricating engineers was burning, and it was a place where they had oil and all of that. And we had the Snarkle basket. The other advantage to the Snarkle basket, I guess it's an advantage, but I'm not sure it was at that point in time, is you could actually have the truck here and you could go over the building. Well, we were doing that at Lubricating Engineers, and Smitty and I again were in the basket, and we had our turnout gear on. We hadn't been there that long, and we were over, and we were probably 10 feet off of the roof of the building, and we were up there, and you could see the whole roof of this building. It started shaking like this, and it just opened up like that. And now what we did have is underneath the basket, we had a big sprinkler head that we didn't have on, but we had a foot valve there that you could hit it with your foot, and it would just do a big shower of water underneath there. And when we saw the roof start doing this, and it seemed like everything was in slow motion, and you could just see it opening up like that, and I mean, it just billowed out, and we were right in the middle of it. And Smitty and I we dropped down in the bottom of the basket, and he hit that lever, and we got the water thing down below us, and I mean, it just rolled over the top of us. And they were calling down there, they're saying, "Are you guys okay up there? Are you guys okay up there?" And then from down there, they took control, and they moved us out from over the building and brought us down, and we were hunkered down in the bottom of the basket like that. I mean, it was, but nothing like that at the Record. Yeah, it was. very much so. But nothing like that at the Record Center. I mean, obviously it was the largest fire. It was the longest fire that I'd been on for, my career. I was there 47 years. And I retired last July after, like I said, after 47 years of it. And it's, the longest one and the biggest one. But I don't know if it was because I was younger and more gung-ho or just, it was just like that. It really wasn't a hard fire to fight. It wasn't a dangerous fire to fight. It was just persistent and hard to get to and took a long, long time.
All right.
And nobody got hurt.
It's the main thing.
If it would have been a dangerous fire that size, there would have been firemen hurt. So I don't know at what point they actually made any kind of an interior attack. I know they probably did initially.
Yeah, from what we've heard.
And
they came out pretty quick.
I was going to say they got ran out really quick from it. And at that point, it was pretty much decided that, get some ladder trucks in here. Well, it was 6 stories up. You're not going to do it from the ground. If you go up there and you get run out, you don't have any other options really. Ladder trucks are it.
Well, thank you for your time.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I enjoy talking about it.
Oh, it was a lot of fun.